You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 109. My name is Clark from 5Card Guys on Instagram and 5cardguys.com. And with me, as usual, is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John, who is Trade You at Recess on Instagram. Okay, guys, off the top, we're getting closer to the Super Bowl. And by the time this episode airs, there will be 4 teams remaining. So first question is, who's your Super Bowl pick? And 2, out of these 4 QBs, who would you try to buy right now for a short-term flip? And the quarterbacks are Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Daniel Jones, or Dak Prescott. And I chose these 4 because they are all on teams who are currently considered the underdogs in their upcoming matches. Okay, so yeah, first, who's your Super Bowl pick? And second, I want to see who would you take the risk on to try to do a short-term flip.
So what do you have? We have Giants, Eagles, Jags, Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, and Cowboys, 49ers.
That's right.
So they got some tough challenges ahead of them. Everyone, all the underdogs.
Yeah, they do.
So what's more likely? This is interesting. I think for me, the quarterback, I think the biggest upside, it has to be between, Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. I definitely like Joe Burrow. I think if he beats out Josh Allen and gets to the Super Bowl, I think that's for the second year in a row. I think he's proven something at least.
Yeah.
Whereas if Trevor Lawrence basically beats Mahomes, man, that could make his prices go kind of bonkers, just silly, just because of where Jacksonville was about 2 months ago, right? So I'm gonna say it's either between them two. I just don't know who, because Joe Burrow's your guy, right? In terms of his prices have already been pretty steep, where Trevor Lawrence is just kind of like constantly going up. So
right. Who are the 4 guys again? Lawrence, Burrow, Jones, and
Daniel Jones and
Dak Prescott.
Dak Prescott. Yeah, right.
Playing against a very good 49ers team.
I think Dak Prescott could win a Super Bowl and his prices won't do anything.
Okay. So we know who Hyung's not choosing.
I'm not choosing Dak. I'm going to go, just quick. It's one of those two, Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow that I like, but I'm going to say Trevor Lawrence just because if he ends up winning, it's, I think, or beating Mahomes, I think it's going to make his cards go bonkers, just because they were kind of in no man's land. I think Joe Burrow did have a slight dip. So I just checked his prices right before this. All of them are green like crazy, like 60% growth, 30% growth, So I think he's gonna have a tough time beating Josh Allen, but anything can happen. Same with Trevor Lawrence. So I'm gonna go with Trevor Lawrence just because he's been so low and he's on a high now, and where he's taking him, the momentum could get him there, and I'm gonna go with Jacksonville.
Hyung's a big time gambler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seriously.
I don't think they're gonna win. Like I don't think they're gonna actually win, but I just think that his card prices could go.
The upside is
the upside is huge.
Sure.
Agreed.
I'm opposite. I'm not taking that bet. I think Trevor Lawrence. If you happen to have Trevor Lawrence or Daniel Jones right now, it's a sell. Like, you sell as quickly as possible. And for Trevor Lawrence, it has nothing to do with his actual skill. I think everyone's kind of seeing what he's made of, but he's still in that hype stage, similar to Joe Burrow in the last couple of runs. So I think this is the time to get off of T-Law and get back to him later if you really like him that much. But so for me, Jones, Lawrence out of the question, and that leaves us with Dak or Joe Burrow. I think I'm kind of in agreement where Dak is kind of stuck in no man's land now. He's past the hype. And at this point, people got to kind of see Hall of Fame trajectory more than anything for his prices to kind of go anywhere. Obviously, a Super Bowl win would help, but I'm with Hyung. Even a Super Bowl win, I don't know how crazy that would make his prices, so I'm going to be off Dak. So it just leaves me with the one. I don't like to pick Joe Burrow as much too. I still think it's a little bit of hype, but of the three, it's going to be Joe Burrow. Okay. Honestly, I think the real short-term, if we're talking real like short-term flip, it's Patrick Mahomes, man. I think his prices still, like, they've gone up a bit, but like if Mahomes wins it, really? I think he starts to cement like legitimate Hall of Fame.
We can't be changing the rules though here.
No, I'm not. Yeah, sorry. But I'm just saying.
You know what? I'm choosing Josh Allen. Okay.
I will say, hey, this is just something to think of. Okay. Trevor Lawrence's XRC Prizm. So his XRC, his 2021 PSE 10, last sold for $900.
Oh,
so
that's so good.
Wow. Yeah, so I feel like it's still cheap. So that's why I was saying Trevor Lawrence. Like I just don't think his prices are that hyped up to Joe Burrow. So it was more of that line thinking.
Right.
Wow.
That makes sense.
The card prices,
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised with that XRC. Holy smokes.
All his prices are cheap. All his base stuff is under 100. So there's opportunity there, I think.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? I had a lot of time to think about this, so I'm just gonna say I'm going with Joe Burrow. I think he's probably the safest out of the four, in my opinion. Just for even beyond short term, just say he loses. I think he's got the potential to come back next year too, right? So I'm gonna be safe. I definitely agree. Trevor Lawrence has the highest upside, especially if he gets to the Super Bowl. Just if he gets to the Super Bowl final, he doesn't even have to win. The prices are gonna start to trend upwards right away, right? So, but I'm like John too. Like if I have T-Law, if I have Daniel Jones, it's already up on eBay. You know what I mean? So I'm selling right away. So I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. All right, Super Bowl picks then.
Ooh.
Wait, so are we picking Super Bowl out of these four guys? Or just in general?
Yeah, just the remaining 8 teams, and you could be wrong by the time this airs.
Yeah. Right, that's right. Yeah,
that's true.
We got to go. I don't think Joe Burrow is going to pass Josh Allen, so I think I like Josh Allen's route. Yeah, I'm going to go Josh Allen in the Bills.
The Bills are going to go all the way?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that'll be fun for us too.
Yeah.
Buffalo. John?
I don't know how much I believe in this, and this is boring, but I like to root for Patrick Mahomes, so I'm picking Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Yeah. I actually am kind of nervous about the Bills. Like, they started the season so well, and they're kind of coasting now, right? And I think in playoffs, anything could happen, right? We've seen it with the Chargers. I'm glad I sold my Justin Herbert card 2-3 weeks ago, right? So I was regretting selling Herbert the first half, and I'm like, oh, I should have kept it.
I sold one too.
and then I saw the final score. I'm like, yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. So so anything could happen. I think the Bengals actually have a decent shot to get by. But I'm going with John. I'm going with the uber safe bet. I think Mahomes, he's gonna cement his I don't want to say legacy because his career is still so young. It's crazy how much he's accomplished already, but I think he'll get his second Super Bowl this year.
I mean, that would be huge because he's still super young, and if he does win another Super Bowl, it proves that he is the guy. He is the next Brady, right?
I love Mahomes. So yeah, another one of those things. Like I think in the last show we talked about. We'll see how right we were with the Mickey Mantle final sale. I think football we historically don't have the greatest record either, but I hope one of us is right for the Super Bowl pick. Watch it be like Jaguars. Watch it be like Trevor Lawrence goes all the way or something crazy like that. But yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun to watch the Super Bowl this year. Okay, let's move on now to hobby headlines. So today I want to talk about alternative ways to find good sports card deals other than trying to snipe on eBay, which frankly is getting harder to do these days, I find. We kind of discussed this in a past episode long ago, but I thought we could revisit it because for starters, we have a bunch of new listeners to the pod. So they might have missed that one episode we did probably a year ago. And I think there are a few more opportunities, I think, where good deals can potentially be had. So I can start things off, and I want to mention first the new weekly auction and marketplace that Golden just launched this past week. I know some people hate Golden, but my point here is that whenever there's a new platform or service that's launched, there's always opportunities, right? And usually it comes with promotions at the beginning that are appealing to the buyer just to get the platform and service launched. So for Golden, their marketplace, which is essentially trying to compete with eBay now, they currently charge as a promo an 8.3% fee regardless of the value of the card that you sell. Okay, so that's compared to what, 12 to 13% on eBay, I think, right? But after the promo ends, I believe you pay similar to what eBay charges you for items or cards valued at $2,500 to $5,000. Anything less, you actually pay more, and for higher ticket cards, you pay a little less. So that's their kind of fee structure after this promo. I'm not sure how long it lasts. So check out their marketplace to see if there's any card that you like. The one thing I'll quickly add is that with new marketplaces, the selection might not be the greatest from the beginning, so just be aware of that. And I like their weekly auctions they added as well on Golden, because it's just like they're competing with PWCC here. And ultimately, as a customer, as a consumer, you have more options to buy cards, and you never know when a few will kind of slip through the cracks, right? So I think it's actually a little risky for sellers to try to sell on newer platforms, but it's definitely good for buyers.
For sure. Yeah. No, I'm a eBay Classic guy. I cannot, I just think it's more of a how comforting it is to be able to get access to whatever card you're looking for with comps. Sure. After doing it for like many years, you're just like, that's your kind of go-to. eBay's kind of like obviously on the front of my home screen on my phone, because it's like literally fingertip access. Right. And I'm on there every day looking at cards. So like for me, it's a platform that like if there's a player I'm interested in, I could get data really quick. So obviously eBay becomes my always go-to, and then I have orders, then I'll scroll through my Facebook. I really like Facebook because there's groups, there's usually easy ways to find vouchers for people if you're ever dealing with, and then they have an easy user interface where a lot of people are on there for their personal reasons. So it's like it's much better dealing with an actual person where they have a profile and stuff like that. Some guys, they say they have two first names, never trust. You never trust a guy with two first names. And then so obviously you have scammers like that. But I bring it up on the podcast frequently. I always have to give a shout out to Blowout Forums, the OG. Right. That's where the real hobbyists stay, and everybody always tells me, hey, keep it down, don't invite new people here, because they don't want to snipe the deals there, because I think they have a marketplace that they probably have a couple pages worth of new listings every day. So it's a good way to kind of check if any deals are put out there, because I feel like the hobby world, that's more of the hobby world, not the flipping world. So you got a lot of guys, like I said, I bought my Manny Machado lot from Blowout, and the guy says he doesn't grade, and like I called BS on him obviously, but he was absolutely right. Like he gave me some actually like really nice cards, right? So I like Blowout Forums in that sense. I used to be a big Instagram guy too. I kind of toned that down in terms of making deals with that. Just no reason in particular. I think I just prefer eBay just because when I'm looking for something, I kind of want the results. And then Facebook goes hand in hand with like just the groups, and there's some geographic pages like bat flips. There's like a bat flip one in Toronto, so it's more of a local community base that I like. And then we have your Bowman Chrome high rollers, you know, that they have super high end cards. So it's cool kind of going through stuff like that. And I enjoy it. And obviously, yeah, those are the platforms that I like to buy and sell off of. I like to stay the same. I know there's stuff like My Slabs that a lot of people, you know, are very high on. And I know people don't like the eBay fees. I'm in that camp too. But at the end of the day, they're bringing, you know, enormous amounts of people to you. So that's the trade. And you could literally put a card on auction that you potentially graded and you want maximum value. You just throw it on there on auction and you should, you know, get a pretty decent return. So eBay's the safest for me, and I like even though it's the most expensive. Yeah.
I mean, like, you brought up a good point about Facebook groups. Like, there are a lot of, well, maybe not a lot, but there are several trusted Facebook groups. So
for sure,
if you're a part of that community already, you probably have a growing confidence in doing big deals. Same thing with blowout forums. I'm sure I've never tried blowout forums or Facebook groups, so I'm definitely taking your word for it. But I'm on Instagram a lot just because with my 5 Card Guys account, and I just feel like there's a lot more scammy behavior on Instagram. Sure. So just be careful out there if you're one of those Instagram buyers. Like, I get DMs from users that say, hey, is that card for sale? And then I look at their profile, 0 followers, 3 posts, and then, you know, I'll tell them, no, it's actually, I'm just helping promote like high-end auctions. And they're like, okay, how much? Like, it just doesn't even make sense what the conversation is, you know? Yeah. So Instagram, you got to be a little bit wary, harder to get vouchers there. So yeah, I just want to bring that up. John,
nice,
right.
Any other suggestions?
You know, like the state of the economy and where we're at in terms of sports cards, I do think if you have cash on hand, these auction houses, eBay, Golden, is probably honestly your best bet, especially for bigger cards. Like, Clark, you and I have been very interested in the 2008 Kobe LeBron card, refractor, which now is going for like $3,000. It's like a great price. Yeah. You know, anytime I see that card in the hand of somebody on Facebook group or like at the card show, it's expensive. Like the whoever has that card locally or wherever, they're not willing to let it go for that rock bottom eBay price. So if you really you have cash on hand and you're looking to really snipe right now, I'm gonna say that the auction house is your best bet. On the flip side, if you're like me and you have your collection or your portfolio and you've committed your dollars and I'm not going to spend any more money because I need to spend money on life right now, then you got to do what you have, right? You got to make up with the collection that you have and start to wheel and deal with that collection. So I think the silver lining right now is that so many people who are quick flippers and just in it for that bull run, a lot of them have left. And my Instagram is a little bit different than yours, Clark. Obviously, yours is like an actual sort of like celebrity Instagram account. Mine is like a little peanuts with like 250 followers. It's just a whole bunch of collectors. So my experience is a little different because most of the people I follow or the ones that I interact with, they're all collectors, right? I think before you had a lot of people flexing on Instagram, look at my 30 slabs of Luka PSA 10s that I just got. I'm willing to sell them off or whatever. Now it's different. People are just showing off not even graded cards, like my collection. And I think the hobbyists are really kind of taking over. So the good thing is if you go to shows, you go to trade nights, I would encourage everyone to kind of get involved. And the more people you get to know, you meet really good, trustworthy people. Like some of Hyung's old experiences is if you make a great deal with somebody who's at the show or in your city, there's probably a good chance if you had a really positive experience, you're going to deal with that person again. If you follow their Instagram account and they happen to have a card that you're interested in, you don't even need to get vouchers involved because you've already met the guy. You guys probably know each other on a first name basis. So I think this is a great opportunity to get involved in the community and kind of immerse yourself in the hobby. And you should be able to get, in that way, I think you can get some deals. You'd be surprised at what kind of deals that could happen for you.
Yeah, no, very good advice. Good suggestions. And I think it's useful for people to hear because I think, well, you're not the only one that's tight on cash and spending it on life. I was going to make a joke, that saying for basketball enthusiasts, ball is life. I was just gonna say cards are life, John. This is what we live for. I wonder if I can get that saying going, but it might be hard to do in a recession. But yeah, I totally hear you, and I think like we gotta. I don't know if you're going to the upcoming CSC show. It's away in Mississauga.
Saga, yeah, it's on the west.
I know.
Close to Johnny.
Yeah, you're closer.
Yeah.
It's closer to you now, right?
Yeah.
But I love going to those shows mostly not for like buying from booths, but making potential trades or things like that. So yeah, hoping to make it out to that one. But
what day is it?
I want to say the 29th.
It's coming up, right?
Oh, it's coming
January.
up soon. Oh, January.
Yeah.
I'll go if you guys
End of
go.
this month.
What day is it?
I think it's a Saturday or Sunday.
Sunday.
I think they're usually on Sundays.
Okay.
Right.
I'd be interested. Interested. Let me know. I'm not going to commit to it yet. It's a little early.
Apparently, it's a bigger venue, and I think the parking is way better there than the
previous
Hilton.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, we won't bore our listeners with this GTA talk. If we do go, we'll let you know if we picked up anything. But hopefully this segment helped you in terms of finding better deals, especially if you're tight on cash or you're just looking for, good grail cards to add to your PC, which we talked about in previous episodes. So good luck to you guys on that. All right, let's go on to our next segment. We've done this before. It's another round of overrated, underrated. And the theme this time is player positions. And you'll get what I mean once I go through the list, okay? So first, overrated or underrated, baseball cards of pitchers. We talked about this before in passing.
I don't think they could be overrated.
Right.
But I get what you're saying. They like, is it properly rated, or it's like,
right?
Yeah.
Essentially, do you think it's underrated or
Man,
rated,
in general, I'm gonna say it's super underrated. Like, I'm thinking Justin Verlanders of the world, the Clayton Kershaws,
right.
the guys that are goated already. Like, if you look at a Nolan Ryan at 60, the Kuzman, or is it Kuzman, the Ryan, the 68, I think.
Oh, like the two photos.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Kuzman,
that's basically Nolan Ryan's like rookie card that still holds a lot of value. And
right.
Nolan Ryan was a GOAT. Like, he was definitely a GOAT. There was some stat that I posted on my Instagram. I think it was like I forget. I'll share that earlier. But if he got the run support that he had, he lost like 191 games in his career. That was something like it was something ridiculous where he pitched like a certain amount of innings and his ERA was like 2.27 and he was like 0-100 or something like that. But anyways,
right.
I feel like in the long run, like the Sandy Koufax of the worlds, the guys, if obviously Roger Clemens was clean, like those prices would have been pretty good because of the impact they left on the game. So I feel like they're super underrated in this sense, especially the modern pitchers, because the scare is the longevity. But guys like Justin Verlander, honestly, like one of the best in the game. Clayton Kershaw, one of the best in the game ever. So like, to me, those prices are still affordable. So I'm still confused at why they are. And I think there's going to be a point in time where people are like, you know what, way too cheap. I'm in on Verlander. So I'm going to say underrated for pitchers.
Yeah. I agree. Everything that Hyung said. I mean, they're not overrated, so they have to be underrated. And I mean, if you just look at to the trajectory of the current pitchers, like Hyung just pointed out, that are headed to the Hall of Fame and their pricing, certainly underrated. So it's an easy one.
I wanted to make a case for overrated, mostly because I'm looking at like the pitching prospects, right? And but I can't make that case because even now those pitching prospects get no love. You know what I mean? Like when we open a hobby box, we're like, oh, we got a pitcher. It's like, the value isn't there.
Everybody says like, damn it, a pitcher.
Yeah, exactly, right? So even like, pitching, and one of the cases I was going to make is like with the game, it's changed a lot. You don't see guys going 9 innings anymore, right? Like they get pulled at 5 innings, 6 innings maybe, right? So unless you're an elite starter, I guess, right? It's just like that's just the way the game is played now. Maybe it'll change in the future. I hope it does, but even with that, like they're still super underrated if you just look at the value of pitchers in general. Starting with the Verlanders, like you mentioned, and even the pitching prospects. It's just kind of a little crazy. Okay, let's go to baseball cards of catchers. We talked about this before too. You think they're overrated or underrated?
I'm gonna say, man, I mean, you could make an argument that they're all underrated, but I'm gonna say overrated for catchers. Here's why. I mean, we invest in catchers all the time in modern cards. Like you have the Adley Rutschman, you have who's Francisco Alvarez now, and
right.
But look at previous catchers that made the Hall of Fame. I have a list of 19 total. The biggest names, obviously, Johnny Bench, Yogi Berra, even Roy Campanella, like old school, Gary Carter, and then Carlton Fisk, and I'm skipping a lot of guys like you guys won't even know, like Bill Dickey, Josh Gibson, Rick Farrell. Ivan Rodriguez, he was a guy that I loved. I don't even remember anybody searching Pudge's rookie cards. Mike Piazza, these guys are legends, but absolutely still no love. So for me, it doesn't matter if they're Hall of Famers or not. They're not going to get any love, period. So I'm going to make the argument that catchers are overrated, but I truly believe that they are underrated in the hobby. But I'm going to say they're overrated just because there's not a lot of big name catchers in the Hall of Fame that would have said that you made a sound investment. And the only ones are the really old school guys like Yogi Berra, and Johnny Bench. That I would say that is actually a good investment. No one's buying Carlton Fisks. No one's buying Pudge Rodriguez. No one's buying Mike Piazza. So, yeah, I'm going to go that.
Okay.
I can see where we're going with this because it's kind of like, and I'm sure this is coming up, but like hockey goalies and stuff like that. Just things, defensive positions in football, like positions that get overlooked or thrown to the wayside. So I get that part. The problem with catching is a lot to do with Hyung said is there's just not much talent out there that you could overrate or underrate, right? Like who is there recently? Yachty is probably one of the bigger ones, and like Buster Posey is probably the other one. Like there's really nothing else, right? So there's nothing really to rate. So for me, it's a little bit more specific to prospects, but I'm gonna say overrated because the only time that the catchers really come into play is the prospect game. And not everybody is like Hyung. Like Hyung knows prospects, he knows baseball. Majority of the people out there are going to be like myself and Clark. We don't actually know these prospects. We're just going by what everybody else says. Beckett says Todd Van Poppel. We go after Todd Van Poppel, right? So, like when we're chasing Bowman first, all like a casual like me, I just know pitching prospect or hitting prospect. That's the only two differentiations. Right. Like I forget that there's a catcher. So even last week when we were talking about like those top 5 Bowman prospects, and Hyung was speaking about, I like this guy. I think it was Alvarez. I like him, but he's a catcher. And I didn't even know that. I was like, oh, okay, that's different, right? So I think a lot of people forget, like, okay, Ali Rutschman, like amazing, and #1 pick overall, but then you just forget that he's a catcher until he makes the majors, and you're like, oh, I didn't know this guy's a catcher. So I think in the Bowman first world, people just kind of overlook that, or they don't think about that. So catchers are certainly overrated, in my opinion.
Yeah. This is going to be a quick one. Definitely overrated for catching prospects like Alvarez, which we talked about last week, like you mentioned, John. And people forget they play 130, 140 games maybe if they're healthy. That puts a dent on their counting stats compared to every other position player.
That's true.
Right?
Good point.
And that becomes a priority for catchers in the game. It's defensive first, always. Like, because when your responsibility, your role as a catcher is defense first, you're instead of taking batting practice, you're catching bullpens instead of, and it starts from the minor leagues up, and it's just something that, and by no means am I dogging catchers, because I honestly, one of my favorite positions in baseball, just the mentality is different. The people who catch are always like the greatest teammates. They're the beauties. Right. So I don't want to take anything away from current catchers, or if people are in the baseball world. We're just strictly talking it from a hobby perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can attest to that. When I was playing house league, when I was like in grade school, I was a catcher for the team. Boy. It was a lot of fun. You got a lot of bruises, but it was a lot of fun. Right. And those are the days when the rule is like you could charge a catcher at home plate too.
I see you as a target, Clark. I'm running you pretty hardcore.
I somehow survived.
I've blown up a few catchers in my time.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't play against you. I'm really glad I didn't play against Hyung. But yeah, catchers overrated. But you know who's underrated? Sal Perez. That guy plays every single game.
Sal Perez.
Oh yeah, old school.
He was great for my fantasy team. All right. Okay. Actually, John kind of alluded to this. I'll do both of them at the same time. Hockey cards of defensemen and hockey cards of goalies. Do you see them the same way? Overrated or underrated?
This is tough. I'm gonna say, you know what? You look at a list of, big time defensemen in the NHL. You Ray Bourque, your Paul Coffeys, your Al McInnes's, your who else? Dennis Potvin, Chris Chelios, Bobby Orr. There's some big names there. So for me, modern defensemen don't get a lot of love, in my opinion, compared to the McDavids and the offensive type players.
Right.
So I'm going to say underrated for D-men because of that, because I think history has shown that, there's been a bunch of great defensive people in the NHL. So I'm going to say underrated. Goalies, goalies, I'm going to say same thing. I'm going to say just hockey in general is underrated. I think, everybody loves the Ovechkins, the McDavids, the Crosbys, and everybody else is secondary. But I could see why it's same kind of love as the catchers, as goalies. They bring a lot of similarities in that sense. But then you got some big name catchers that, Ken Dryden was like the big name when I just remember that card, the Ken Dryden card that was always in the Beckett price guide. So it was like, those are iconic cards. Yeah. Right. So I think in history, hockey proves that, vintage hockey has a huge history, and I think we're kind of losing that because of the modern game of cards, and we try using modern logic with that. So I think I'm going to say both underrated.
Okay.
Right. I like defense. I think defense is supremely underrated, especially in the modern era where there's a lot more offense happening. You're seeing it happen more and more often, where defensemen are producing highlight reel goals and plays and being in the forefront of conversation, like Cale Makar. So I think you're gonna start to see that a lot more and more, and I think there will be a time we're gonna see, and maybe it's Cale Makar, but you'll see like the next Bobby or some Connor McDavid type of defenseman that puts up like 100 points a year. I'm sure we're gonna see it very soon. So I think defense is supremely underrated. I think there is something to like collecting defensemen. Goalie, it's a little tough, because if you play hockey, goalie is just such a different position. It's almost like it's not hockey. So you play hockey, and then goalie is just completely separate. And even if you guys have played hockey, like the personality type, the type of person that plays goalie is so different. It's not your typical. It's not your typical hockey guy, right? Like a lot of goalies, no offense to a lot of goalies out there, but they're not like the jock type. They're a little bit, probably a little bit more on the quiet side, a little bit nerdier. Like it's a completely different beast. All the respect to them, But I think in that way, if you play hockey or if you play a position forward or defense, it's hard to like relate to the goalie somewhat. So even if you watch somebody awesome like Carey Price, oh, he made a great save, oh, he's got a .935 save percentage, he might win the Vezina. It's all amazing, but it's just one of those things that like, is that sex appeal there? Because like it's hard to relate to that. Is that cool? I don't know. Is that amazing? I'm not sure, right? So, and it gets even worse for a casual because you're just like, oh yeah, I guess that's kind of cool. I don't know. So it's tough to say. I want to say because goalies bring back such great memories in terms of collecting, like Hyung said, like a Ken Dry, Patrick Waugh, like one of the most iconic 80s cards out there. So it's hard, I think, because it's not overrated or underrated, but I'm still gonna after all that is said, I think I'm still gonna say underrated because it's just hockey in general I think is underrated, but goalie's like tricky one for me, and I'm close to, I'm like right in the middle.
Okay, that's a classic John answer.
I know.
It's all pointing towards overrated, and it's like but it's underrated. But you know, I followed you because, you know, we all kind of grew up in the same era of hockey, and you know, like Curtis Joseph was the guy, you know, and even Felix Potvin. If you were a Leafs fan, like
Felix Potvin,
you rooted for the goalie, like, you know, Ed Belfour, like those guys I will never forget, right? But in this more modern game where the goal scoring can get really high, like who pays for it? Is goalies too, right? You know, not the defensemen, the goalies. And you know, like even if you play fantasy for the last few years, honestly, like why would you ever draft the goalie high? Because you just don't know what kind of year you're gonna have.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, right. So like it's so I think defensemen are underrated for all the reasons you guys mentioned, but goalie in today's game, I think they're pretty overrated, just because the game's changed and just the value, long-term value, even mid-term value is not there. You know, for whatever the price is, even though they're probably cheap. And yeah, and you know, when you're saying like goalies have a different personality, that just reminded me of, like, I had to Google his name, Ilya Brzgalov. Remember that guy?
Yeah. Wow, how do you remember him?
You know why? Because the interview, that one famous interview where the reporter's like, "Are you scared of anything? Thinking about hockey?" He's like, "I'm only afraid of bears in the forest." Like, I'm like, yeah, that's a goalie.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway. All right, we'll finish this segment with football cards. Football cards of wide receivers, and you could throw in running backs, you know, anyone but QBs. Obviously, do you think that wide receivers or running backs are overrated or underrated?
Oh man. I'm gonna say underrated, to be honest, because I feel like
for wide receivers or both?
Oh yeah, for running backs and wide receivers, okay. I think just they're offensive players. Quarterbacks obviously get only the love, so I think there's definitely room, I think, in that sense, because there are some big time names in the running back and wide receiver side that, you know, are fan favorites at the end of the day, and I just think they're super underrated based on value and price. And it goes with kind of like this whole list that you mentioned, right? Is like, I don't really see the argument of necessarily overrated. I could see that there's an argument that prices aren't great for those type of players. Like, they get absolutely no love and no stability in terms of, you know, price action. It's all quarterbacks in football, and it might not change. That's why it might be overrated, because it might not change. I don't know if that will change, right? But I think it should. Because I think they're offensive players, so I don't see why not. Yeah.
I hear you.
Underrated for me too. I really want to have a football guy on with some history, because I collected back in the day and I watched football when I was a lot younger, a lot more, and I don't know where in the hobby it changed to quarterbacks only having value, because I remember back in the day, like, everyone would collect, like, you're going after Emmitt Smith, Bo Jackson, come on, Barry Sanders. That was like all time. You know, you're looking at Randy Moss. Even like Marvin Harrison, like smaller guys were popular, right? And at some point, and I don't know, this is where I want some sort of sports card historian to come and let me know what happened. but it just went all to the wayside, and it's only quarterbacks. And it made it even worse because all these flippers came into the game, and then it highlighted the quarterback play even more. So much to the point where any wide receiver or anything else other than quarterback is like, it means nothing, right? So I'm going to say underrated, but it's kind of turned into one of those hobby logics. Like, why is it underrated, and is it ever going to turn around? I don't know, but just on my personal collecting history and what I know about football cards, like I think it's underrated big time.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you guys with wide receivers. I think they're really underrated.
I know where you're going with this one, with the injury.
Yeah, exactly. So with running backs, like, they are just one serious injury away from just being irrelevant.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's the truth of the matter.
Good point.
And running backs do get some love, I think. Like
Jim
the
Brown.
elite ones. Right. Yeah. But even like in the modern game, like when Ezekiel Elliott came out, like, he got a lot of love, and his cards were pretty, they were up there for his high end ones. And now it's like, the backup running back could be the next star just by the primary running back getting injured. Right. So, and you just never know when it's going to end. It's like, they're the ones that get the most contact. It's crazy what running backs, subject their bodies to. It is really, it can be violent, right? So, so I think for at least the elite running backs that come in the game that get a lot of attention, I still believe, especially if they were amazing in college. Like, I'm afraid to invest in any of those cards, at the NFL level, especially because we've seen them, after like 1 or 2 seasons, they're all of a sudden irrelevant, and that's a sad story. So underrated for wide receiver and overrated for running backs. All right, that's a fun segment. We'll we always like coming back to this overrated underrated segment just to get different perspectives, and we'll definitely come back to it in a future episode. All right, let's end off this show with our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. And if you're a first-time listener, or if you're new to the pod, this is when each of us, we put up 2 cards or 2 sets, and we debate which one we would rather invest in, or which statement we agree more on. So, Hyung, do you want to start things off as usual?
Sure. I'm gonna stick with baseball and prospecting. I really like a couple of prospects that are kind of in the game right now, young prospects that are, and we talked a bit about him with his cards blowing up a bit. Jasson Chourio, the 18-year-old stud who was in Double-A this year with Milwaukee Brewers. He's 19 years old now, but he has a chance to be in Milwaukee this year. Whether that happens, I don't know if that's going to happen or not because he's super young, but I'm going to go with a refractor 2022 Bowman Chrome PSA 10 auto out of $4.99. The last couple sold for $12.75 and $12.50 versus Jasson Dominguez, the other New York Yankee stud who has huge upside. So you have the Yankee uniform versus the Milwaukee Brewers uniform, which is huge. But Jasson Dominguez, 2020 Bowman Chrome. So he too is 18, turning 19. He'll probably be in Double-A next year. So just a bit behind Jasson Chourio in terms of his development. But his PSA 10 auto refractor sold for $14.59, so $1,500. So they're both, I think, big cards, but which one would you guys choose if you had to pick one?
Man, I am the worst guy to ask about prospecting.
I know, that's why I did it. That's why.
So this is gonna be
because you talk hockey and you know much I don't.
Yeah,
that,
touche.
So.
Yeah, understood.
I like to balance it out in each show. So
yeah, I like Jasson Dominguez because I like the tantalizing home run hitting ability and power, and the fact that he's on the Yankees. I think Jasson Dominguez is probably a little bit more of a long-term play. So for me, because none of these guys, as of right now, they don't appeal to me collecting wise, like PC. I don't know them, and I'm not necessarily rooting for them. So if I were to purchase these, it would be for more of a quicker flip. So I'm going to go with Jasson Chourio because based on what Hyung is sort of been alluding to based on these two prospects, he's the one that looks like he's pretty close to making it. And based on his trajectory, looks like he's succeeding really well in the minors. So I think there's a good chance that he can make a big splash as he comes into the league, whether it's this year or next. So I like, in terms of a shorter term flip, I like that potential over Jasson Dominguez, who's maybe earliest 2 years, maybe 3 years away. Hyung, you could tell me otherwise. So yeah, I'm gonna go.
I'd say 2 years.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go Chourio.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Jackson Chourio as a prospect. Does he have a nickname?
I don't know, but he's the number 1 or 2 prospect in all of it MLB now. Or 2, okay. I want to say.
Wow.
So. Okay. I'm just gonna go with Dominguez because he has the nickname The Martian, and I think that's pretty good. That's pretty cool. No, you know what? Like I like Jasson Dominguez now at this price. Like when it was like, remember the hobby hype? Like when it was like, I think it was 5-6K. This card. I was just checking on Card Ladder. Like that was ridiculous. You know, like, and he was what 16, 17 at the time. It's like it's just totally ridiculous that people were paying for that much hype for a player that was still at least 3-4 years away at that time, right? So, but now I'm like, the upside is very tantalizing as a Yankee prospect. The power potential, and a couple $100 more than Chourio. I'm gonna go with Dominguez because of that upside.
Interesting. I left an important detail out. I should have said this before.
Okay.
And not that this
we're gonna flip.
Not that this would have changed it at all, but I forgot to mention that the pop on the Jasson Dominguez was 108, and the pop on the Jackson Chourio was 16, I believe.
16, okay.
But it's also new.
So it's also new. So you're gonna get a lot more graded. So it's gonna even out in that sense. Not that would have made a difference on your opinions, but
I'm sticking with Dominguez.
Yeah. Okay. I like Dominguez. I think he's gonna be a stud. I also believe though that when basically we entered the market when Dominguez came in, he was the hottest thing in 2020, and that was part of the hype of the hobby. I think it ended up becoming massive. I still think his price was still impacted by that move, and it's still moving downwards because it's still correcting. Right. So you're right in terms of the value was there before, but I think it was so overhyped based on kind of like even the Bobby Witts. I mean, he's in the big leagues right now, but Bobby Witt Jr. and Anthony Volpe were both in that same set. So I think based on that, I think Jackson Chourio right now is the better ball player because he's obviously the number 2 prospect in baseball. And for me, it's like if he makes the big leagues as a 19-year-old, I think you're potentially talking the same category as the Julio Rodriguez, the Mike Trouts, that type of player in terms of like early entrance. What type of impact is he going to have? Is he going to hit 20, 30 home runs as a teenager in the big leagues? Whereas Jasson Dominguez, I feel like he's going to have a lot slower approach. There's a lot more development needed in that, but he's going to be a young prospect that I don't know if he's going to be a 30 home run guy, for instance, right? He could be more closer to a Wander Franco type. He obviously a lot stronger, but he might be a 20 home run guy. Whereas Chourio, I think I really like what I see and what he brings kind of to the table. So I'm gonna say Chourio based on his prices and the pop count. He hit 20 home runs as an 18-year-old kid last year in the minors, and I think that power number is gonna continually go up as he matures. So he's a 60 power in terms of his MLB grade, and he runs he's a 70 runner, so he could hit for power and run like no other. So I'm gonna go Jackson Chourio. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, I'm going with Jackson Chourio too. I don't want to be on record if he's the next Trout. It's like,
yeah,
this guy Clark went
and then he absolutely flops, right?
And Dominguez flops. Yeah. This will be the worst. I'm gonna just delete this episode if that ever happens. Where's episode 109?
It's not about being right. It's about speaking from the heart.
True.
Because the intention was there.
Yeah, I'll just use it for the dead wrong segment. You're right. All right, good one, okay. Johnny.
Yep. So I'm gonna go off the board with my 1v1. We're gonna go greater feeling. What's a greater feeling? Pulling a monster hit or sniping a grail card for a steal price?
I like this. This
is a good one. I like it.
Yeah. Kind of like both. Yeah.
I know.
I'll go first because you know what? I'm going to go with the one that's super rare for me, which is pulling a monster hit. So it's one of those things like, the more rare the opportunity is, and when it happens, you just appreciate it that much more. And, like eBay sniping it feels good. Don't get me wrong. I love it. When you get that good deal, it gives you like that, dopamine rush, like that high. But nothing like pulling a monster hit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's my choice.
Yeah. I'm gonna like for me it's the monster hit. There's nothing better feeling than hitting a monster. Like it's weird. You feel like you're invincible. You feel on top of the world. Your conversations are a little more like perkier. You just want to take a picture of it and just show everybody that has ever collected cards. Right. Whereas sniping is like, what? I'm happy about it, but it's not like that adrenaline rush. Right. Yeah. Like I think every time I pull a monster, I take a picture. First thing I do is take a picture. Look what I pulled. Right. Yeah. So I love that feeling. I think it's one of the greatest feelings. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm about to save my 1v1 in a very sad way because I can only go by experience. Similar to Clark, I have never hit. I've never had a monster hit, so I have no idea what that feels like, other than watching it on YouTube, other people getting it. But I do know what sniping a grail card for a steal price is, and you get a pretty mean adrenaline rush. So sadly, that's the only experience I have. So I'm gonna go with sniping a grail card for a steal price.
That's fair.
Nice.
That's fair. It's all relative too. So
yeah.
No, I always love John's 1v1s. Very creative.
It's very creative.
All right, I'm going to go back to my old, boring 1v1s. Actually, this is a little bit interesting because I want to see where you guys are at. My pick one is Cade Cunningham, 2021 Blue Prizm color match, number to 199, of course. His rookie card, PSA 10, versus the iconic Ken Griffey Jr., 1989 Upper Deck rookie card. You guys all know what it is, PSA 10. And they both go around for $1,800 now. I also wanted to bring this up because I'm working on a 5-Card Guys video highlighting the Ken Griffey Jr. 1989 Upper Deck card. So look for that next week. Nice. So that's a shameless promotion right there. But I wanted to see which one are you going for, the newer one or the older, more iconic card?
I'm going older iconic card for sure. Like there's no doubt in my mind that Griffey, and I've done well in Griffey in this market too. Like I remember I was buying those PSA 10s for like $600, and the 89 Griffey Upper Deck, and I did really well with them. I ended up selling at the peak. I wouldn't say at the peak, but it was over, I believe, 25 at the time, and I just loved the card. There was hesitation in me to not even sell it because it was such an iconic card. But then it's easy to get your hands on, which is the kind of like the downside. So it's not as rare as the Cade Cunningham. Right. So I see that. But like for me, it's like it's a no brainer. It's not. I'm not sold on Cade Cunningham, to be honest. I'm not a huge fan of Cade Cunningham.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go Griffey in this sense. I think Griffey's so underrated, man.
Yeah, I forgot to do what you did. Pop count for.
I would imagine it'd be similar to the Jasson Dominguez, right?
It's like almost. Well, the Ken Griffey, you already know the pop count for PSA 10 is 4,100.
Right. Yeah.
And then the pop count for the blue number to 199 obviously is going to be much lower at 10 right now. But that could go up, and also like in the video while I was researching for the Ken Griffey Upper Deck card for the video, there's over 96,000 graded. So
Wow.
4,000 is a 4% gem rate.
Right,
so that's what makes it rare. But
right.
that's just
And
background
the most printed card ever. Mm.
Most printed card ever, and it's crazy that like the most graded card by PSA ever is that card, 1989.
Right.
And then the second most graded card, which will be in the video as well, I'm giving you guys
Zion?
spoilers, is the 1989 Ken Griffey Jr. tops traded. The third most graded card by PSA is
Luka.
the 1989
It's all old.
Fleer Ken Griffey Jr.
No
Ken Griffey Jr. holds
way.
all three top baseball card spot. There's a Pokemon
Right.
in there, but for baseball cards, sports cards, Ken Griffey
That's
holds the top
crazy.
three. Yeah. That's
Wow. Did not know that.
So anyway, just fun
It's
information for
good
you.
display.
Yeah. Oh, this is a good one, Clark. It's making me think. So you know me, Cade Cunningham, he's still in that sort of hype phase, although he got injured and a lot of that has simmered, which is probably a good thing for people that want to go after him. On the flip side, Ken Griffey, I mean, this is should be a no-brainer for PC or whatever, right? Ken Griffey, like that card is top 5 all-time iconic. It is an important piece of history. It's just one of those cards, right? But I think when you think about this a lot deeper, it kind of goes along with Hyung kind of touched on it, how like the availability of the Griffey. As important as that card is, I think like some of us old heads where we remember like it was the card that we chased. And I think when you first come back into the hobby, you know, for most of us who left and came back, that's probably the first card that you look at to try to buy because that's your immediate memory, right?
It was for me.
But so let's say you buy it and then it's been 2.5 years later since you returned to the hobby and you're deep into it now. You got a big collection. You're going after Lucas. You're going after autographs. And that card usually for most people, it kind of becomes like a bit expendable, like because you could probably get it back for like a pretty similar price. And as special as it is and as iconic as it is, I think even for me, it's an all-time grail, but Griffey, I don't know, because it's like it's upper deck junk wax era paper. So in a sense, there is a level of sort of vanilla. It's a little bit boring. If I'm being very honest and I want to collect a grail Griffey, I've kind of moved my eyes towards like 94 finest refractor or like a flawless patch auto, on-card auto, something like that, a little bit more special. And if you were to ask every major collector out there, as important as this card is, ask them, do you have this card in your collection? And I'll bet you most likely people are going to be like, I don't. It's a top 5 all-time iconic card, but I don't have it in my collection. And I think that just goes to show how it doesn't create the excitement in your current collection. So I think it's just one of these cards that as iconic as it is, it's just going to kind of be around, kicking around all the time. I think by the Mike Trout update, it's going to be a similar kind of card. So because of that reason, because it's just availability and like it's just kicking around, it's not going to stir up excitement. It's not going to explode at any time soon. I'm kind of a bit more leaning towards taking a risk and going after the Cunningham and just making a short-term play. And when he comes back and hopefully he plays like an all-star level, Blue Prizm, PSA 10, short printed, low print run in terms of the PSA 10, color match, all of the above. I think it could be a pretty big win. So I can't believe I'm saying that, but I'm going to go with
I can't believe it either.
I know.
I don't think you'd ever do that.
It's like blasphemy, but I don't know.
Johnny always surprises. But you know what? Like, John does this to me occasionally. Like, makes me rethink my answer, you know, like when I go last. Like, man, he makes some very good points, but I can't let go of the iconicness. I know that's probably not a word, but the iconicness of this Ken Griffey Upper Deck. And maybe I'm biased too, because I've done a lot of research over the last 2 days. And, the number one card for the inaugural set of Upper Deck, a PSA 10. And you look at the charts, like, I remember when I first got into the hobby, no lie, my first card I got was actually a PSA 9 of this card, because I'm like, just nostalgia just hit me big time. Right. And I was looking at the PSA 10 and, it was $300 at the time. Like, oh man, that's a lot. $300, getting back into the hobby for a card like that. And now it's like 1,800, right? It's like, and of course at the hobby height, it went up over 5K. And so it's dropped down to 1,800, but I could have got it for 300. So it's kind of, this is where the resistance level is, it seems, right? And who knows if there's another push in the hobby, when people have more disposable income, more people our age get into it. I'm sure there's still a lot of us who aren't back into it, and I still see there's going to be room for growth in the hobby, especially with fanatics getting involved. I feel like it has a chance to go back up a little bit, even despite the print runs and all that stuff. And then, once people educate themselves on grading and things like that, I see a chance. So for that reason, and for just the personal bias, of course, of growing up with Ken Griffey as my favorite player that I've ever had, I'm going with Griffey. But that's exactly the reason why Johnny chose Cade Cunningham, so why I put it for 1v1, because I almost convinced myself too, like the Blue Prizm color match, numbered.
You could talk yourself into it, I'm telling you.
Yeah,
it was a really good 1v1. Yeah, I like it.
All right, great. That wraps up this episode, Tuesday episode. We'll be back on Tuesday next week for a brand new episode. And if you missed our Friday episode, we announced a small contest for hitting our 1,000 subscriber mark. So you can go to our Instagram at Cards to the Moon. We'll have a contest post pinned to the top, and all you have to do is like the post, and then we'll announce it in our next Friday episode, which is about a week and a half. When this comes out. All right, thanks again. We appreciate you guys. If you like this podcast, if you like this episode, please give us 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcast. And we'll see you again next week. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.